Julia Whitmore had long given up on surprises. At 67, she had built a quiet, slow life in the misty seaside town of Astoria, Oregana, place where the waves whispered secrets and the skies always seemed heavy with memory. She had lost her husband, Frank, 5 years earlier to a long, cruel fight with cancer. And though the pain had softened with time, the loneliness never truly left her. Her days were quiet, sometimes too quiet. She read worn-out paperbacks, took care of a wildflower garden that bloomed with no rules, and visited Frank's grave every Sunday, speaking to the stone as if he were still listening. The town knew her as Mrs. Whitmore, the classy widow with sad eyes and a gentle smile. No one imagined there was still a spark inside her. Not even Julia. That summer, someone changed everything. His name was Ethan Miller, a 27-year-old from Seattle, staying next door at his grandmother's house to escape the noise of city life and mend a few broken parts of his own. He was handsome in that unpolished, careless, way messy brown hair, thoughtful eyes, and a quiet sadness that clung to him like a shadow. Ethan had just left a draining relationship, lost his copywriting job at a marketing firm, and hit that strange crossroad every adult faces. What now? He came to Astoria with a laptop, a suitcase, and the hope that this quiet town could help him find his voice again, both in writing and in life. They met by accident. Julia was walking home from the market with her arms full of groceries bags. Too heavy, her stubborn pride too thick to ask for help. Ethan saw her from across the street and jogged over, offering a smile and a simple, "Let me help you with that." She almost said no, but something in his voice, or maybe the way his eyes lingered just a little longer than necessary, made her nod. He carried the bags up her porch steps, commenting on her garden, and she, surprised at herself, invited him in for a glass of iced tea, just one. That just one turned into 2 hours. They sat across from each other, the late afternoon light pouring in through lace curtains. Julia learned he was a writer struggling with self-doubt. Ethan learned she once dreamed of being an artist but gave it all up for marriage and responsibility. She spoke with elegance and fire. He listened with curiosity and warmth. It was strange, the way they connected. It wasn't just polite conversation. It was two lost souls recognizing something familiar in each other. Not pity, not loneliness. Something deeper. Ethan began stopping by more often, sometimes to ask about the best hiking trails, sometimes just to borrow sugar. But they both knew it wasn't about the sugar. Their conversations grew longer, more personal. He told her about the woman who cheated on him and how it shattered his trust. She told him about nights when the silence in her house was so loud it kept her awake. He began to see her not as an old woman, but as a woman sharp, sensual, witty. Julia noticed the way he looked at her, not with embarrassment, not with confusion, but with genuine desire. And that terrified her, because something inside her, something long buried, began to respond. One evening, as the sky turned pink and the ocean roared softly in the distance, Julia laughed at one of Ethan's stories. Their eyes locked. Time slowed. She felt the air shift. Neither spoke. Then, without thinking, he reached out and gently tucked a loose strand of her silver hair behind her ear. Her heart raced. For the first time in years, she felt visible, desired, alive. What began as kindness was now turning into something far more complicated and far more dangerous. The quiet life Julia had built was about to be shaken. And she had no idea just how much. Summer in Astoria brought a gentle warmth, the kind that made the ocean shimmer and the breeze feel like a soft kiss against the skin. Julia began to notice the changes in herself. She woke up earlier, brushed her hair a little longer, chose softer blouses, and even wore perfume again, something she hadn't done in years. It was subtle, like the slow blooming of a flower that thought its time had passed. Ethan became a regular part of her days. He would show up mid-morning with coffee and muffins, claiming he needed a break from writing. She'd invite him to sit in the garden with her, where lavender and wild roses grew in quiet rebellion. They would sit for hours, talking about everything, and nothing his fears of failure, her regrets about not following her dreams. Books they loved, music that made them feel young. It was strange how easily their conversations flowed, how safe they felt with each other. Age stopped mattering. Time stopped mattering. It wasn't just about companionship anymore. There was something electric humming beneath their connection. And both of them felt it even if neither dared to speak it out loud. Ethan admired her in a way no one had in a long time. Not just for her beauty, though. He found the soft lines of her face and the grace in her hands beautiful but for her strength. Her calm, the way she carried herself like a woman who had lived, hurt, survived, and still found reasons to smile. Julia, in turn, saw something rare in him: honesty, vulnerability, and a depth that many men his age didn't have. He didn't try to impress her. He just showed up as he was, and that alone was enough to stir something in her she thought had died with her husband. One evening, Ethan invited her to join him on the beach for a walk. The sky was painted with gold and fire, the waves crashing softly as if they, too, were part of the conversation. Julia hesitated at first, not wanting to be seen out with a man so much younger. But something inside her, maybe desire, maybe defiance, whispered, "Go." They walked barefoot along the shore, laughing about how cold the water was, sharing memories that still ached. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Ethan stopped walking and looked at her. "You know," he said, his voice low, "I've never felt more at home than I do when I'm with you." Julia's heart skipped. She tried to laugh it off, to protect herself. "Don't be ridiculous. I'm old enough to be your mother. Maybe even your grandmother." But Ethan didn't flinch. He stepped closer, gently taking her hand. "I don't care about numbers," he said. "I care about how you make me feel." Then came the moment neither expected. A kiss not rushed, not wild, but soft and full of meaning. It was hesitant at first, like a secret being shared. But once their lips met, everything else faded: the world, the noise, the rules. When they pulled apart, they were both breathless. Julia touched her lips as if unsure the kiss had really happened. Ethan watched her carefully, not pushing, just waiting. She looked into his eyes, full of heat and longing, and for the first time in years, she let herself feel all of it. Guilt, no shame, just the truth of the moment. That night, they didn't speak much. Ethan walked her back home, their fingers brushing every few steps. She went to bed with a heart that beat like it hadn't in decades. Something had begun, something they couldn't explain, couldn't name, and certainly couldn't ignore. Was more than attraction. It was a soul-deep connection. And neither of them knew where it would lead, but both were willing to follow it wherever it went. The kiss had changed everything. After that night on the beach, Julia and Ethan stepped quietly but completely into something real. Something raw, an affair, not built on lust alone, but on emotional hunger, shared loneliness, and a connection deeper than either expected. They didn't talk about what they were or where it was going. Kay simply let it happen, one day at a time. Ethan started spending more evenings at Julia's house, helping her cook simple meals, sipping red wine on her porch, sometimes falling asleep beside her on the couch with an old movie playing in the background. There was comfort in the routine, intimacy in the silence. And when the lights were off and the world felt far away, they made love not rushed or reckless, but slow, full of tenderness and discovery. Ethan touched her like she was still 25, like every part of her mattered. Julia let him see, her without hiding, without shame, without apology. It was more than physical. It was healing, but they knew the outside world wouldn't understand. The age difference was too much for small-town minds to accept, so they kept it a secret. Hand-holding in public, no long looks in the grocery store. They stole kisses behind closed doors and whispered goodbyes before sunrise. It wasn't ideal, but it was enough for now. Julia had never broken the rules in her life. She had been the loyal wife, the perfect neighbor, the respectable widow. But this made her feel alive. And she wasn't ready to give it up. Ethan, on the other hand, didn't care what people thought. He was too wrapped up in the way Julia made him feel grounded, seen, and understood. He told her one night, "You're the only thing in my life right now that feels real." She didn't answer, just kissed him softly and let the silence speak. For her, still, secrets have a way of rising. Karen, Julia's longtime friend and part-time busybody, began noticing things. Ethan's car parked out front late at night. Julia's sudden glow, the way she smiled more, laughed deeper. People in town whispered. Julia felt it in the sideways glances at the bakery, the awkward silences at church. The pressure began to build. One morning, Karen showed up unannounced, with coffee and questions hidden behind a fake smile. Julia deflected as best she could, but she felt the walls closing in. That night she told Ethan, "Maybe this is a mistake. Maybe we should stop before it ruins your life." He looked at her like she had broken something sacred. "You're not ruining anything," he said. "You're the only good thing I've had in a long time." Still, doubt crept in. Julia started pulling back, not in love, but in fear. She was older. He had his whole life ahead of him. What if this was just a phase for him? A summer distraction? And what would people say when they finally knew? These questions haunted her late at night as she lay next to Ethan's sleeping body, tracing the lines of his face with her eyes, memorizing the way he breathed. But Ethan wasn't running. He was leaning in. He cooked for her. He read her pieces of his unfinished novel. He watched her when she wasn't looking, like he couldn't believe she was real. And that's when she realized this wasn't just about her. He needed her. As much as she needed him. If their connection wasn't some scandal, it was a lifeline, something beautiful, even if it had to stay hidden. The world might not understand it. But in their stolen moments, in their quiet touches and long lingering kisses, Julia and Ethan had found something rare, something pure. And even if the outside world never accepted it, they weren't ready to let it go. Asterisk, the affair, for all its secrecy, had begun to feel like home. Julia and Ethan were living in their own private world, one built on shared pain. Slow mornings and passion that surprised them both. But love, especially the kind that lives in shadows, is fragile. And that fragility was exposed the day Ethan's past showed up in the form of Maya. She arrived without warning, driving in from Portland in her sleek black SUV, wearing that same confident smirk that once charmed and broke Ethan. She had heard he was in Astoria mutual friends, social media breadcrumbs, and came looking for answers. Or maybe just control. Maya was everything Julia wasn't: young, polished, ambitious. She carried the scent of a life Ethan had once wanted. City lights, late nights, fast plans. Julia spotted them from her living room window. Ethan and Maya standing too close on the sidewalk, talking quietly. Julia froze, her heart sinking, memories of betrayal rushing back from her own past. She had trusted Ethan with pieces of herself. She hadn't shown anyone in years, and now she wasn't sure where she stood. That night, Ethan didn't come over. No text, no call. Julia waited in silence, trying not to imagine things, but failing. Her mind painted pictures: Maya laughing, Ethan tempted, Julia forgotten. When he finally showed up the next day, there was tension in the air. He kissed her, but something was different. She looked at him, eyes heavy with doubt, and asked softly, "Did you kiss her?" Ethan stepped back, hurt flashing across his face. "No," he said, "but I won't lie. Part of me wanted to." His honesty was a slap, gentle, but still a slap. Julia turned away, her throat tight. "Course you did," she whispered. "She's your past. Just a mistake you're trying not to regret." That argument was their first real storm. Words came fast, sharp, and unfiltered. Julia accused him of chasing a fantasy. Ethan accused her of hiding behind fear, of pushing him away because it was easier than trusting that he actually loved her. "You're always waiting for this to fall apart," he shouted. "You never believed we could last," she shouted back. "Because we can't, Ethan. I'm not stupid. I see how people look at us. I hear what they say." She turned her back, her chest rising and falling fast. He stood there, fists clenched, eyes dark with frustration, and then he left. Just like that, Julia sat alone that night, curled on the couch in her robe, trying to breathe through the ache. She felt foolish, exposed. Maybe they had been pretending. Maybe it had all been too fragile from the start. She didn't sleep. She didn't cry either. She just sat there, numb, listening to the clock tick, the house creak, the ocean crash. In the distance, like it was trying to drown out her thoughts. Ethan didn't return the next day. Or the day after. No message, no knock at the door. And just like that, the silence between them became louder than any argument. Julia forced herself to act normal, gardening, grocery shopping, smiling politely at neighbors who seemed to know too much, but inside, something was breaking. She had let someone in deep in, and now she felt the sting of that choice. Still, beneath the heartbreak, there was something else, a stubborn ember of love that refused to go out. She missed him. She missed the way he listened, the way he made her laugh without trying, the way his touch made her feel like she mattered, not as someone's grandmother, not as a widow, but as a woman. But maybe love wasn't always enough. Maybe, despite everything, they had finally reached the beginning of the end. Days turned into a week, and the silence between Julia and Ethan stretched like a tightrope, ready to snap. Julia tried to move on, or at least pretend she was. But everything reminded her of him. The way the morning light poured into the kitchen, the coffee mugs they once shared, the empty chair across the table. Her house, once quiet and peaceful, now felt cold. She missed his presence, like she missed a part of herself. Every time the phone buzzed, her heart jumped, only to sink again when it wasn't him. The truth was simple. She had fallen in love. Fully, painfully, helplessly. Not just with his body, but with his soul, with the way he made her feel young. Again, alive again. But she was also scared. Scared of the gossip, the judgment, the age difference, the what-ifs. She was afraid that loving him made her foolish, but even more afraid that pushing him away had been her biggest mistake. Then, one evening, just as she was watering her garden with the sun setting low behind the trees, she heard his voice behind her. "You look beautiful when you're angry." "With me," Ethan said, his tone soft, hopeful. Julia froze. Her hand trembled around the watering can. Slowly, she turned around to find him standing at the edge of her garden, looking tired but sure of himself. He stepped forward, eyes locked on hers. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have come back sooner. I just needed time to think." Julia swallowed the lump in her throat. "Think about what?" Her voice cracked. "Whether she still had a place in your heart." Ethan shook his head. "No. I needed to think about us. About whether I was strong enough to fight for something. Real, something hard." He stepped closer, took her hand. "And I am. I choose you. I want you. Not just in secret, not just behind closed doors. I want a real life with you, Julia, even if people stare. Even if they talk." Tears welled up in Julia's eyes. She tried to pull her hand away, but he held on. "You deserve someone younger," she whispered. "Someone who can give you children, a future time." Ethan reached up, gently touched her face. "You are my future," he said. "And I don't want children right now. I want peace. I want love. And I've never loved anyone the way I love you." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded letter. "I wrote this for you. I've been working on it since the night we met." Julia opened it slowly, her hands shaking. And as she read his words about how she changed his life, how he found himself in her arms, how he no longer cared what people thought, the tears finally fell. They kissed again under the fading. light, with the scent of roses around them and the weight of their pain beginning to lift. It wasn't perfect. It was still complicated. But love, they realized, didn't have to be perfect to be real that night. For the first time, Julia didn't ask him to leave before dawn. They cooked dinner together, slow and clumsy, dancing between the pots and pans like two people who had been through war and chose each other anyway. They laughed, cried, made love with a deeper hunger for something lasting, not just fleeting. Afterward, they lay in bed, wrapped around each other, and Ethan whispered, "Let's stop hiding." Julia hesitated, but then she nodded. "Let's stop." It was a small promise, but it meant everything. 'Cause from that moment on, they were no longer running from love. They were stepping into it openly, bravely, and without apology. The summer faded slowly in Astoria, Oregon, as if the sky itself wanted to hold on to the warmth that Julia and Ethan had created together. After they decided to stop hiding their love, everything felt brighter, freer. They no longer ducked behind closed curtains or avoided town events. They held hands in public. They kissed in the sunlight. Whispers followed them. Yes, but so did admiration. Some people stared, but many simply nodded, surprised at the quiet beauty of two people who clearly loved each other with every part of their being. Julia smiled more now. Her neighbors noticed. Even her old friend Karen, the one who always had something to say, finally admitted over coffee. "He really does look at you like you're the only woman in the world." Julia laughed. Sometimes it feels that way. Life, at last, felt full again. Ethan was finishing his book. He said it was about her, really, about how love doesn't ask permission or follow rules. Julia had taken up painting again. Her canvas blooming with deep reds, soft blues, and gold like the sunsets they watched every evening. It was everything she never thought she'd find again. But love, as always, had one more twist waiting. It started with a headache, just a dull ache behind Ethan's eyes. He brushed it off, too busy finishing chapters, drinking too much coffee, not sleeping enough. But then the dizziness came, and the fainting. Julia begged him to see a doctor. He finally did, and that's when the world changed. A brain tumor. Large, aggressive, silent until now. Julia didn't cry at first. She listened to the words like they were being spoken to someone else. Ethan held her hand tightly, his voice calm, even as hers shook. "I'm not afraid of dying," he said. "But I am afraid of leaving you." The treatments were rushed. Surgery, radiation, hope, and then reality. Nothing was working. The doctor gave him 6 months, maybe less. Julia refused to accept it. She read everything she could, prayed, pleaded with the universe to take her instead. But the cancer didn't care about prayers or love stories. It kept growing. Ethan moved into her home completely after that, not out of romance, but necessity. She cared for him, fed him, washed him, held him when the pain was too much. He lost weight. His hands began to shake. But even as his body faded, his love for her burned brighter. On the nights he felt strong enough, he would pull her into bed, kiss her gently, whisper how lucky he was to have found her. "You were my second chance," he told her. "You made my short life feel full." Julia wept when he said those things. Because she had finally let herself love, deeply and without fear, and now she had to say goodbye. Ethan passed away on a quiet morning in early fall, in Julia's arms with sunlight pouring through the bedroom window. He died peacefully, a faint smile on his lips. Julia stayed in bed long after, holding him, whispering all the words she hadn't gotten to say. "Thank you, I love you, I'll never stop." The town mourned gently and with respect. No one gossiped anymore. Everyone knew they had witnessed something real. Something rare. Julia lived on, with both grief and gratitude tangled in her heart. She published Ethan's novel just as he had wanted. The dedication read, "For Julia, my forever, no matter how short." She continued painting, planting roses in his memory, and walking the beach alone where they first kissed. Some days, the ache felt unbearable. But most days, she smiled through tears, knowing she had loved and been loved in return. Because sometimes, even the briefest love stories can last a lifetime.